Hi, writers! Welcome to week 11 and our second week on fences. Last week we read Act 1, scenes 1 through 4, and, well, 4 scenes for Act 1. And this week we're reading Act 2. There are only 2 acts for this whole play. And so Act 2 has 5 scenes. I'm sorry for the confusion on that. I accidentally put that there were 5 scenes for Act 1, but there were only 4. Just as a reminder, if you don't have fences and you know you're not going to buy the play, then you can go ahead and go to announcements. There's a link in the announcements that takes you to a PDF of the play that someone posted with MIT. And so it's here. You can go ahead and click on it. I'll click on it so you can see what it looks like. Bam! So it's not the best quality, but it will do. It's 24 pages and it's the entire play. This play has been anthologized in readers for literature courses, for drama courses, for quite some time. It's one of the most popularized plays that's anthologized for academic study. And so that's pretty significant. Again, if you don't have the play, just use the PDF. Either way is fine. The one, if you got it from the bookstore, is just easier to read. It looks so much longer, but it's really only 24 pages. So I also wanted to remind you that there is an excellent movie version of the play, and it's Viola Davis and Denzel Washington. It's great. I haven't actually had the play looked at the script of the play while watching the movie, but I plan on doing that sometime this week or maybe even next week. So again, I advise you to watch the movie. Read the play, of course, but also watch the movie. It's a great rendition of the play. I'm not quite sure how much it stays perfectly on the actual writing of August Wilson, but the intention is definitely there. I would not advise you to watch it if it didn't line up with the actual play itself. Great actors, great play, great movie. So I suggest that you watch it, especially for those of you that are having a hard time while you're reading it. If you're having a hard time visualizing it or imagining it, then watch the movie. You can kind of help that with that creative aspect in your mind. So those are just a few tips as far as what's happening in this upcoming week. There's a couple discussions here. Before I go into the discussions, I just wanted to do a little shout out for essay number 1. You guys did a really great job with essay number 1. I did comment in another video last week or the week before about the things that I was noticing. The one area I was recommending that you work on in your writing, and this is across the board for the most part, was really slowing down in your introduction, in your introductory paragraph or paragraphs, where you're setting the stage for your reader. It's super, super, super important that you take your time in doing that. It will help guide your reader into what you plan to discuss in your essay. So along with setting the stage and opening up that universe in your introduction, really planting a solid thesis. And some of you are doing 3-point thesis so you can guide your body paragraphs, and that's great. But remember, your reader is looking for that guidance. It's your job as the writer to usher your reader in, to intrigue them with these ideas about what you're talking about, and then to really set the stage and give them a map. The introduction is a map for your reader to predict what's going to happen in your essay. So again, the introduction is one thing I mentioned. I just want to mention 2 more things going into this last official essay of the play is, again, be mindful of your introduction, but also be aware of MLA citing. I'm just here on OWL Purdue website. This is the most commonly used website for citing. Obviously, you would use your handbook if you have it. But another great reference is the OWL Purdue website. So again, another piece of advice as you're looking at MLA citing, use your handbook. And then one more thing I wanted to mention was transitions. Transitional phrases or transitions are not even though they seem basic, they're super important in writing. So what transitions do is they glue your ideas together. So they glue ideas together within the paragraph. And then they also connect ideas from paragraph to paragraph. So as writers, we're dealing with lots of different ideas. And one of the most challenging tasks as a writer is to make sure that the paragraph before and after are connected to the paragraph in the middle. And so transitions are a really, really easy way to just create that flow and that overall coherence in your essay. So I'm just on a random website. This one happens to be Ashford University. If you Google transitional phrases, tons of websites will pop up. This is just one that gives you lots of transitional phrases, but again, they're everywhere. And so you can just click on one and you can kind of see there will be a list. For the last essay, many of you did a compare and contrast, but you weren't quite using the language of compare and contrast. So compare language would look like this: by comparison, equally, in the same way, likewise. These phrases will help you when you're transitioning from one paragraph about, say, fish cheeks to the next paragraph about girl. You would say something like likewise or similarly or in a similar manner. These are little words that just connect and click for your reader. So again, play with transitions. Part of your job in here in this English class is to play. I know that sometimes it's hard to see that, to have that mindset, but I want you to adopt the mindset of play in this class with your writing, because it's really going to help you just have that freedom to express yourself and to experiment, and that's really important. I want you to be curious about ways that you can play in your writing. So 2 more pieces of advice. Emily, we're excited using the OWL Purdue website or your handbook and really looking up, how do you cite a play? How do you cite a line from a play? Or how do you cite a work from an anthology? Or how do you cite this kind of source? Just plain looking, being curious, and then again, those transitional phrases. So the advice I gave you before in the other video was introduction, focusing on that. And I think the other one was thesis, really making sure that you have an argument and that it's clear to your reader what you're going to be looking at with your argument. You don't have to give it all to them in the beginning of your essay, but you want to plant that seed. These 4 things will make your essay stellar. So again, we're just playing and we're working with what we got and working with ideas and working with experimenting. So as far as week 10, last week, I've left those discussions open. I really want you to look at the material in those discussions and understand what I'm showing you regarding, excuse me, an introduction to drama, and then also that lecture on fences. So I've left weeks 10 open, week 10 discussions, so you can catch up for those of you that are catching up. Moving into week 11, we have 2 more discussions. One discussion here, the first one, Act 2, is going over Act 2 in the same way that you went over Act 1. And then the second discussion is, once you've finished with Fences, reading the entire play and hopefully watching the movie as well. It's free on Prime if you have Prime Video or a Prime membership. But the second discussion is looking at criticism. So we'll start with the first discussion for week 11. This first discussion should look really similar because it's actually modeled after the discussion from last week. First, you're going to start off by watching this YouTube video that goes over the fact that every story is the same. It goes over the narrative arc in stories, which is going to sound really familiar to you, and it integrates one of the most awesome philosophers of our time, Joseph Campbell, and the philosophy of the hero's journey from his book, Hero with 1,000 Faces. And so, great video, 15 minutes, kick back, get some popcorn, take some notes about how this video about story arc applies to Fences, and specifically to our protagonist, Troy, and even Rose, since she is a big part of the story as well. After you watch the movie and take little notes in your journal, you're going to read and annotate and take notes of Fences Act 2. Remember, now's your opportunity to do those journal entries, and if you're not quite sure what that looks like, I can click over there in just a minute, but you want to not multitask, but you want to you do the work that you're going to be asked to do later as you're reading, if that's kind of your style. If your style is just to read straight through and not without interruption, then do it that way. But for those of you that are engaging with the text and writing as you're reading, then that's a good time to kind of pull out quotes for your journal. Again, I can go over the journal in a separate discussion probably to kind of make sure you understand what I'm looking for. And then so after you've read the play, you're going to do what you did for Act 1, all 5 scenes. You're going to apply it to the concepts from Introduction to Plays packet. So we're looking at narrative arc, exposition, climax, denouncement, all that stuff, and see how it applies. You can look at theme, tone, setting, characterization, characters, plot. You can look at any of those things that were mentioned in the packet. And then if you feel inspired by the story arc ideas from the video, then maybe they're going to pop out to you in the actual play as you're reading it. So take note of those things while you're reading. And then you're going to post a solid paragraph response to someone else after you've posted yours. So remember, it's really important for you to slow down, take a breath, and just enjoy the material. Not rush through it, but take your time. Anytime we're rushing, we're usually not fully present, and we're usually not fully awakened and aware of what we're looking at. And so that's really important that you take your time. That's the first discussion. The second discussion is a bit, I don't want to say it's meatier, but there may be more involved here. So you're firstly going to start by looking at, I have a video here, and this video is actually from my summer class, so I'm going to check it out and see if it's relevant and makes sense for you guys. I made it for my 6-week summer course, so I may say things in there that are a little bit different, but I'm sure that it goes over this discussion because it hasn't changed too much. For this discussion, now that you've read Fences, you're going to look at literary criticism that is connected to some of the ideas that are in Fences. So there's 3 different types of sources here. The first one is an actual LaVisi Library database article titled "The Failure of the American Dream in Fences." So it looks at this concept of the American dream as it plays out in Fences. It's really important that you're familiar with the library database and that you're familiar with looking at a source from an academic journal. So I'm just going to click on it. So this is from the International Journal of English Language and Translation Studies. And so an abstract here in the beginning is really what the essay is about. It's like a summary of the essay, a summary of what the author is going to be going over. And so that's your first source. You're going to read and take notes of that and just think about how it applies to the play. Your second source here is a BBC article titled "Kanye West Suggests African American Slavery Was a Choice." So this one's a bit controversial, but again, we're looking at ideas here. And so we have a BBC News article, and you can scroll through it and you can read about what he says about mental imprisonment. Again, so slavery is not just a physical thing that happened, it's a mindset. And so mental imprisonment is kind of what we're looking at here. And think about, how does this apply to Troy specifically, and the play overall? And then the last one is a video by Childish Gambino, which I'm sure many of you have already seen, but this is a song titled "This Is America." And so you're gonna watch the video, and I want you to think about what does it evoke within you that might relate it to Fences and some of the issues going on in Fences. Remember, we're playing in this discussion. There's no answers that I'm looking for. We're playing with ideas, and we're pushing ourselves further. When you go to post, there's directions for posting for each paragraph. There's 3 paragraphs, and each paragraph is dedicated to one of the sources above. So you're going to do that, and you're going to read and respond to a classmate's post. So we're kind of pushing ourselves into critical thinking. Remember, the whole purpose of this class is to ask questions, is to think critically. You know, how does this relate? Does this even relate? You know, and what issues do you see popping up in the videos, in the video, or in the articles that are presented here? So again, that's the second discussion for week 11. I hope that you can take your time and really enjoy the material, and I look forward to seeing your ideas.